The November rain hit like tiny bullets against my skin as I stepped off the bus, two grocery bags cutting circulation to my fingers. The handles dug deep, leaving angry red marks that I knew would fade by morning, just like everything else I endured. I shifted the weight, trying to ease the burning in my shoulders and quicken my pace toward home. The streetlights of Scranton flickered weakly through the downpour, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the whole world look as exhausted as I felt. I could hear the television before I even turned the key in the lock. Of course. The volume was cranked up so high that our neighbors probably knew every plot twist of whatever show Brian was watching. I pushed the door open with my hip water dripping from my hair onto the hardwood floor that I had scrubbed just 3 days ago. The living room was exactly as I had left it that morning, except now there were empty chip bags scattered across the coffee table and a half-drunk soda can sweating a ring onto the wood. Brian was stretched out on the sofa in his old gym clothes, the ones with the holes in the armpits that I had asked him to throw away 6 months ago. His eyes were glued to the screen, his hand mechanically moving from the bag of chips to his mouth and back again. He did not look up. He did not acknowledge my presence. It was as if I had not just walked through the door carrying what felt like 50 pounds of groceries after working a 9-hour shift at the accounting firm. I stood there for a moment, rain still dripping from my coat, my arms screaming in protest. Something inside me snapped just a little crack, but enough that I felt it. My voice came out sharper than I intended, almost a growl. "Are you planning to help me with these bags, Brian?" He did not even turn his head. His eyes stayed locked on the television as if it held the secrets of the universe. "I figured you got home okay. How heavy can a couple of bags be?" The dismissiveness in his tone was what did it. I walked to the kitchen and dropped both bags onto the floor with a crash that echoed through the house. Glass jars clinked dangerously against each other. Cans rolled across the tile. Brian jerked upright, finally tearing his gaze away from his show, his face twisted in annoyance. "What the hell, Catherine? You trying to wreck my evening?" I spun around to face him, my wet coat clinging to my arms, my hair plastered to my forehead. Your evening, Brian. My evening started at 5 this morning when I got up to pack lunches, make breakfast, get the kids ready for school, and then spend 9 hours balancing books for people who actually have jobs." "And what did you do all day?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but only for a second. Then came the excuse, the same one I had heard 100 times. "I had an interview. It just was not the right fit." I laughed. I actually laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that surprised even me. "Not the right fit. That is the line you have been using for 2 years, Brian. 2 years of nothing being the right fit while I carry this entire family on my back." Before he could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his 14-year-old frame all sharp angles and barely contained anger. His eyes moved from me to his father with a look that made my heart sink. It was contempt, pure and simple. When had that happened? When had my son started looking at his father like that? Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. "Mom, I need $50 for the field trip next week. Dad said he has been looking for work for 2 years. When is there actually going to be money?" Brian sat up straighter, his face flushing. "Ethan, that is not how you talk to your father." My son's eyes narrowed. "And that is not how a father is supposed to act." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. I saw Brian flinch as if he had been slapped. I wanted to defend him, to tell Ethan to show respect, but the words died in my throat because my son was not wrong. He was echoing the thoughts I had been too afraid to voice. Before I could say anything, Chloe came down the stairs, her 8-year-old face streaked with tears. Her cleats dangled from her hand. "Mommy, my shoes do not fit anymore. They hurt really bad. I cannot play soccer tomorrow." I crouched down and pulled her into my arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. Over her head, I could see Brian standing there, useless and paralyzed, unable to fix anything. I pressed my lips against Chloe's hair and tried to swallow the sob building in my chest. This was my life. This was what I had become. A human shield between my children and the reality that their father had checked out 2 years ago. I put Chloe to bed that night, lying next to her until her breathing evened out. Her soccer cleats sat on the floor, scuffed and too small. I had bought them 8 months ago, splurging on a decent pair because she loved the sport so much. Now they were useless, and I had no idea where the money for new ones would come from. Brian's unemployment had run out 6 months ago. We were living on my salary alone, and it was not enough. It had never been enough, but somehow I kept stretching it, cutting corners, making miracles happen with pennies. I walked downstairs to find Brian exactly where I had left him, remote in hand, eyes glazed. I stood in the doorway and watched him for a long moment. He had been handsome once, the kind of man who turned heads when he walked into a room. Confident, ambitious, full of plans for our future. That man had vanished somewhere along the way, replaced by this hollow version who seemed content to let life happen to him. I started putting away the groceries I had abandoned earlier. Brian did not offer to help. He never did. I organized cans in the pantry, placed vegetables in the crisper, and tried to calculate how far I could stretch this week's food budget. $73 until Friday. 4 people. 7 days. The math was impossible, but I would make it work somehow. I always did. The next morning came too soon. My alarm went off at 5 and I dragged myself out of bed feeling like I had barely slept. Brian was snoring softly, one arm thrown over his face. I showered quickly in lukewarm water because the hot water heater was acting up again and I could not afford to fix it. I dressed in the dark, grabbed my work bag, and headed downstairs to start the morning routine. Lunches first. Peanut butter sandwiches for both kids because we were out of deli meat, an apple cut into slices for Chloe, a banana for Ethan, a handful of crackers in baggies because I could not afford the prepackaged snacks their friends brought to school. I tried not to think about the lunch debt notice that had come home with Chloe last week, another bill I could not pay. Coffee brewing, I started breakfast. Oatmeal with a drizzle of honey, the cheap kind that came in a plastic bear, toast with margarine. Orange juice watered down just enough that the kids would not notice. I set the table, packed the lunches, and went upstairs to wake Ethan and Chloe. Getting them ready was always a challenge. Ethan was going through that teenage phase where everything annoyed him, especially me. Chloe was struggling in math and had a test today she was terrified of failing. I helped her review multiplication tables while braiding her hair, multitasking because there was never enough time. By 7:30, they were out the door, backpacks heavy with books we could not afford to replace. I watched them walk down the street toward the bus stop, Ethan's shoulders hunched against the cold, Chloe's too small jacket barely keeping her warm. I needed to get them new winter coats, another thing on the endless list of things I could not afford. I grabbed my own coat and bag, locked the door, and started the walk to the bus stop. Brian would sleep until 10, maybe 11. He would wake up, make himself coffee, and spend the day doing exactly what he had done yesterday and the day before that. Maybe he would open his laptop and scroll through job listings. Maybe he would update his resume for the 100th time, but he would not apply. He never applied. There was always some reason why the job was not right, why it was beneath him, why he needed to wait for something better. At the office, I slipped into my cubicle and tried to focus on work. Numbers usually calmed me, the orderly rows of figures that always balanced if you worked them correctly. But today, I kept making mistakes, transposing digits, losing my place. My manager, Elaine, stopped by around 10. "Catherine, you look exhausted. Everything okay at home?" I forced a smile. "Just tired. I will be fine." She studied me for a moment, her expression skeptical but kind. "You have been working here for 7 years. You have never taken a sick day, never complained, never asked for anything. If you need help, you can tell me." The concern in her voice almost broke me. I blinked hard against the sudden sting of tears. "I am fine. Really, just a rough week." She nodded slowly, but I could tell she did not believe me. "The offer for that senior accountant position is still open. More money, more responsibility. You should think about it." After she left, I sat staring at my computer screen, her words echoing in my head. More money. God, what I could do with more money. New shoes for Chloe. A winter coat for Ethan. Maybe even enough to pay off some of the credit card debt that kept growing, no matter how hard I tried to chip away at it. But more responsibility also meant more hours, and I was already stretched so thin I felt like I might snap at any moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Coffee tomorrow, you sound like you need it." I texted back a quick yes and returned to my spreadsheets. The numbers blurred together and I realized I had been staring at the same column for 10 minutes without actually seeing it. I rubbed my eyes and tried to refocus, but it was useless. My mind kept wandering back to the house, to Brian on the couch, to the growing pile of unpaid bills stuffed in the kitchen drawer. That evening, I stopped at the grocery store on my way home, even though it was not my usual shopping day. We were out of milk and bread, the basics that could not wait. I wandered the aisles with my calculator app open, adding up prices, putting things back, trying to stay under $30. A woman passed me with a cart overflowing with groceries, tossing items in without even looking at the prices. I felt a sharp pang of envy so intense it almost doubled me over. At the checkout, the total came to $32.50. I put back a box of granola bars and tried again. $31.15. Close enough. I swiped my debit card and held my breath until it was approved, relief flooding through me. There was supposed to be $40 left in the account until payday. That gave me exactly $8.85 of wiggle room for the rest of the week. The bus ride home felt longer than usual, every stop dragging out every red light an eternity. A man got on at Cedar Street and sat 2 rows ahead of me. His phone rang and I could not help but overhear his conversation. "Hey, sweetheart. Yeah, I am on my way home now." No, I did not forget. I picked up the dry cleaning and stopped by the pharmacy for your prescription. What, oh, dinner? I thought we could order from that Italian place you like. My treat. You have been working so hard this week, you deserve a break. He paused, listening, and then laughed. Of course I remembered, it is your mom's birthday on Saturday. I already bought a card for us to sign. Don't worry, I have got it handled. Another pause. I love you too. See you in 20 minutes. He hung up and smiled to himself, the kind of contented smile that comes from a life that makes sense, from a partnership that works. I turned my face toward the window and felt tears sliding down my cheeks before I could stop them. When was the last time Brian had remembered anything without me reminding him? When was the last time he had offered to order dinner, to pick up dry cleaning, to handle anything at all? I thought about the man's words. You have been working so hard this week, you deserve a break. Brian had not acknowledged my hard work in 2 years. He had not thanked me, had not told me he appreciated what I did, had not even seemed to notice that I was slowly drowning. The bus reached my stop and I got off, wiping my face with the back of my hand. I walked slowly toward home, dreading what I would find. The dishes from this morning still in the sink, probably. The laundry I had started before work, still sitting wet in the machine. The kids' homework scattered across the dining table, no one having checked if it was done correctly. I was right, all of it. Plus the garbage overflowing because Brian had not taken it out, and a strange smell coming from the refrigerator because something had gone bad. Brian was on the couch naturally, watching some action movie with explosions and car chases. I put the groceries away in silence, started a load of laundry, took out the garbage, and began making dinner. Spaghetti with jarred sauce, the cheapest meal I could think of that would fill everyone up. While the pasta boiled, I helped Chloe with her math homework at the kitchen table. She was crying because she did not understand fractions, and I was trying to explain them while also stirring the sauce and checking on the garlic bread in the oven. Ethan came in and threw his backpack on the floor. "What is for dinner?" "Spaghetti." He groaned. "Again, we just had that last week." I felt something snap inside me. "Then maybe your father can get off the couch and cook something different." Ethan looked startled by the sharpness in my voice. Brian appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "What is your problem, Catherine?" I turned to face him, wooden spoon still in my hand, sauce dripping onto the floor. My problem is that I am doing everything. I am working full-time, taking care of the kids, cooking, cleaning, paying bills we cannot afford, and you are watching movies. That is my problem. I am looking for work. You are not. You are sitting on that couch making excuses. There is a difference. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. Ethan asked, "What is for dinner?" You know what I wish someone would ask me? They would ask if I need help, if I am tired, if there is anything they can do to make my life even slightly easier. But no one asks that. No one even thinks to ask. I turned back to the stove, my hands shaking. Dinner was a silent, tense affair. Everyone ate quickly and disappeared to their rooms, leaving me alone with the dishes and the leftovers and the weight of everything unsaid. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the pile of bills I had been avoiding. Credit card statements, utility bills, medical bills from Chloe's strep throat 3 months ago, the orthodontist payment plan for Ethan's braces. I added it all up on a piece of scrap paper, and the total made my stomach turn. We were $6,000 in debt, and that number was growing every month. Brian came in and opened the refrigerator, staring at the contents as if food would magically appear. "Is there anything for a snack?" No, we are out of everything. He closed the refrigerator and leaned against the counter. You seem stressed. I looked up at him, this man I had married 15 years ago, this stranger who seemed completely unaware that our life was falling apart. I am stressed because we are broke, Brian. I am stressed because I do not know how I am going to pay these bills. I am stressed because our daughter needs new shoes and our son needs money for a field trip, and I am running out of ways to stretch $1. I will get a job. I told you I am looking. Looking is not enough. I need you to have a job. I need you to contribute. I need you to be a partner instead of another child I have to take care of. He flinched at that, and for a moment I thought he might actually hear me, but then he shook his head. I am not going to take just anything, Catherine. I have standards. I worked too hard to build my career to throw it away on some entry-level position. Your career. You do not have a career anymore. You have been unemployed for 2 years. At some point you have to accept that and start over. I am not starting over. I am waiting for the right opportunity. I laughed, that same hollow sound from yesterday. And while you are waiting, I am dying. Do you understand that I am drowning and you are just standing on the shore watching it happen? He did not have an answer for that. He just turned and walked away, back to the living room, back to the television. I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills I could not pay, and felt the last shred of my patience disintegrate. The next day, I met Sophia at the coffee shop near my office. She was already there when I arrived, 2 lattes waiting on the table. I slid into the booth across from her and immediately felt some of the tension in my shoulders ease. Sophia was the kind of friend who did not require explanations or pretense. She saw through everything. You look terrible, she said without preamble. Thanks. That is exactly what I needed to hear. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. I mean it, Kate. You look like you have not slept in a month. What is going on? I wrapped my hands around the warm cup and told her everything. The groceries, the fight, the bills, the crushing weight of being the only adult in a house full of people who needed me. She listened without interrupting, her face growing darker as I talked. When I finished, she sat back and crossed her arms. You know what you are doing, right? You are enabling him. I am trying to keep my family together. No, you are carrying him. There is a difference. As long as you do everything, he has no reason to change. Why would he? You have made it so he does not have to. Her words stung because they were true. I had been telling myself I was being strong, being selfless, being a good wife and mother, but really I was just making it easy for Brian to avoid responsibility. Sophia leaned forward, her voice gentler now. Men do not change because we ask nicely. They change when the alternative becomes more painful than staying the same. Right now the alternative is not painful for him at all. You are absorbing all the pain. I blinked back tears. I do not know what else to do. You stop. You just stop doing it all and let him see what happens. I cannot. The kids need me. The kids need a mother who is not on the verge of a breakdown. And they need to see what a healthy relationship looks like, which this is not. We sat in silence for a moment, and then Sophia changed the subject. Do you remember David from the gym? Tall guy, works in finance. I vaguely remembered him. He had smiled at me a few times, held the door open once. Sort of. Why? He asked about you last week. Wanted to know if you were single. I felt heat creep into my face. Why would he think I am single? Sophia shrugged. Maybe because you do not wear your wedding ring anymore. I looked down at my left hand, startled. She was right. I had stopped wearing it months ago after losing weight from stress. It had become too loose, kept spinning around my finger, so I had taken it off and put it in my jewelry box. I had not even noticed it was gone. That does not mean anything. Does not it? Sophia studied me carefully. Kate, when was the last time you felt seen? When was the last time someone looked at you like you mattered? I could not answer because I honestly could not remember. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You are not invisible. You are a beautiful, intelligent, hard-working woman. If Brian cannot see that, there are plenty of men who can. Her words stayed with me for the rest of the day. At the office, I found myself looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, really looking. I had lost weight, too much weight. My face was gaunt, dark circles under my eyes. My hair needed a cut and color. When had I stopped taking care of myself? When had I decided I was not worth the time or money? That evening, I stayed late at the office to finish a project. It was easier than going home, easier than facing the mess and the tension and Brian's blank stare. When I finally left at 7, the office was empty except for the cleaning crew. I rode the bus home in the dark, watching the city lights blur past. At home I found chaos. Chloe was crying at the kitchen table, papers spread everywhere. Ethan was yelling at Brian about something. Dinner had not been made. The dishes from breakfast were still in the sink. Brian looked frazzled and overwhelmed, and I felt a grim satisfaction seeing him struggle with just a few hours of what I dealt with every day. "Where were you?" Brian demanded when I walked in. "Working late. What happened to dinner?" I did not know what to make. The kids were hungry, so I ordered pizza. I looked at the empty pizza box on the counter and felt my jaw tighten. Pizza was expensive, at least $30 we did not have. We cannot afford pizza. The kids were hungry. What was I supposed to do? Cook something. We have food in the house. I do not know what you want me to make. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Anything, Brian. Literally anything. Eggs, grilled cheese, pasta. You are a 42-year-old man. Figure it out. I helped Chloe finish her homework, a worksheet on fractions that she was hopelessly confused about. After 30 minutes of patient explanation, she finally understood and her tears dried up. She hugged me tight before going to bed, and I held her maybe a little longer than necessary. Ethan was in his room with the door closed, music blasting. I knocked and went in without waiting for permission. He was lying on his bed, headphones on, staring at the ceiling. I tapped his shoulder and he pulled off the headphones. "We need to talk about the way you spoke to your father earlier." He sat up, his face hard. Why, he deserved it. He is still your father. You owe him respect. Respect, Mom, come on. When was the last time he did anything worth respecting? He sits on the couch all day while you kill yourself to keep this family afloat. I am not stupid. I see what is happening. His words hit me like a physical blow because they were exactly what I had been thinking. It is more complicated than that. Is it though? Because from where I am sitting, it looks pretty simple. Dad gave up and you are covering for him. I did not have a response to that. Ethan put his headphones back on and I left the room feeling even more exhausted than before. Back downstairs, Brian was finally doing the dishes, but he was doing it wrong, leaving food stuck on plates, not rinsing things properly. I stood in the doorway watching him, and the urge to take over was almost overwhelming. But I did not. I just turned and went upstairs. In bed, I lay awake listening to Brian snore beside me. My mind raced through tomorrow's to-do list, next week's bills, the 1,000 little problems I needed to solve. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I finally fell into a restless sleep filled with dreams of drowning. Friday came, and with it payday. I checked my bank account on my phone during my lunch break and felt a rush of relief seeing the deposit. It lasted exactly as long as it took me to transfer money to cover the bills. Rent, electricity, water, car, insurance, phone bill. When I was done, there was $300 left for groceries, gas, and everything else until the next paycheck 2 weeks away. I sat in my car in the office parking lot and calculated. $70 for gas. That left $230 for groceries and incidentals. About $16 a day for food for 4 people. It was not enough, but it would have to be. My phone rang. It was the school, and my heart dropped. Calls from school were never good news. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Principal Fletcher. I am calling about Ethan. There was an incident today." My stomach clenched. "What kind of incident?" "He got into a fight with another student. We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence, so he is suspended for 3 days starting Monday." A fight. Ethan had never been in a fight in his life. He was the kid who avoided conflict, who talked his way out of problems. What happened? Another student made a comment about his father. Ethan became physical. "I understand there are difficulties at home, Mrs. Morrison, but we cannot allow this kind of behavior." After I hung up, I sat in the car with my head in my hands. This was my fault. My 14-year-old son was so stressed and angry about our situation that he was getting into fights at school. I had failed him by staying in this situation for so long, by pretending everything was fine when it so clearly was not. That evening, I confronted Ethan about the fight. He was defensive at first, but eventually the story came out. A kid in his class had said something about Brian being a loser who could not get a job. Ethan had punched him. It was that simple and that devastating. "I am sick of everyone talking about us," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "The teachers all know we are on the lunch assistance program. The other kids know Dad does not work. They all feel sorry for me, and I hate it. I hate feeling like the poor kid. I hate watching you work yourself to death while Dad does nothing. I pulled him into a hug, and he did not resist. He was almost as tall as me now when that happened. He felt thin and brittle in my arms, like he might break. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I am so sorry you are dealing with this." "It is not your fault, Mom, it is his." I could not argue with that, so I did not try. Later, after Ethan was in bed, I told Brian about the suspension. He looked shocked. "A fight Ethan does not fight." "He does now. Because of the situation we are putting him in. Because his classmates are making fun of him for having an unemployed father." Brian's face went pale. "That is not fair. I am trying." "Are you? Because from where I am standing, you are not trying very hard. And now our son is paying the price for your pride." "What do you want me to do, Catherine? Take some minimum wage job that is beneath me?" "Yes, that is exactly what I want you to do, because right now you are teaching our children that it is okay to give up, to let other people carry your weight, to have no sense of responsibility." We fought for an hour, the same argument we had been having for 2 years, just louder and more desperate. It went nowhere. It always went nowhere. Eventually I went to bed exhausted and hopeless. Saturday morning I woke up before dawn as always. But this time, instead of starting my usual routine, I just lay there. Sophia's words kept echoing in my head. "You stop. You just stop doing it all and let him see what happens." What would happen if I stopped? What would happen if just for one day I put myself first? The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I had not done anything for myself in years. Every decision, every action, every moment was about someone else. The kids, Brian, the house, the bills. When was the last time I had asked myself what I needed? I got out of bed quietly, trying not to wake Brian. I showered and dressed in my favorite jeans, the ones I saved for special occasions, and my good jacket. I went downstairs and made coffee, standing by the window watching the sun come up. The house was still and peaceful, the calm before the storm of Saturday morning routines. Pancakes, laundry, grocery shopping, yard work, cleaning, all the things that filled my weekends. But not today. Today I was going to do something I had not done in 15 years. I was going to leave without a plan, without permission, without an explanation, beyond a few words on paper. I found a notepad in the kitchen drawer and wrote quickly before I could change my mind. "I have something I need to do. I will be back tonight." I left it on the kitchen table where Brian would find it. Then I grabbed my purse, turned off my phone, and walked out the door. The morning air was cold and fresh, and I breathed it in deeply. I did not have a destination in mind. I just started walking toward downtown, letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. It felt strange, this purposeless wandering. I was always going somewhere, always doing something. The guilt started immediately, a nagging voice in my head, listing all the things I should be doing instead. But I pushed it down and kept walking. I ended up at a small bakery I had passed 100 times but never entered. It was the kind of place that sold expensive pastries and fancy coffee, the kind of place I told myself we could not afford. But today I went in. I ordered a latte and a croissant and sat at a table by the window. The latte came in a beautiful ceramic cup with foam art on top. The croissant was buttery and flaky and melted in my mouth. It was the most delicious thing I had eaten in months, maybe years. I sat there for an hour, just sipping my coffee and watching people walk by. No one needed me. No one was crying or fighting or asking me to solve their problems. It was the most peace I had felt in as long as I could remember. After the bakery, I wandered into a used bookstore. I love books, or at least I used to. I could not remember the last time I had read something just for pleasure. Everything was audiobooks in the car or articles on my phone in those few minutes before I fell asleep. I browsed the shelves, running my fingers over spines, pulling out books at random and reading first pages. I bought 3 paperbacks, spending money I should have saved, and felt absolutely no guilt about it. Lunch was at a small diner, just me and a book and a grilled cheese sandwich. The waitress kept refilling my coffee without me having to ask, and I left a generous tip even though I could not really afford it. It felt good to be generous, to not have to count every penny for once. In the afternoon, I walked to the park and sat on a bench by the pond. It was cold, but I did not care. I watched ducks paddle across the water, listened to the wind in the trees, and let my mind go blank. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was not thinking about what needed to be done next. I was just existing, just being. Around 3, I called my father from a payphone in the park. I had not wanted to turn on my cell phone, afraid of the messages and missed calls that would pull me back into reality. My dad picked up on the second ring. "Katie, is everything okay?" Just hearing his voice made tears spring to my eyes. "Hi, Dad. I am okay. I just wanted to talk." "Where are you? You do not sound like you are home." "I am at the park. I left this morning. I just had to get away for a while." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "Your mother did that once. Did I ever tell you about that?" "No. When you were about Ethan's age. I had lost a big construction contract and I was feeling sorry for myself. I stopped looking for work, stopped helping around the house. I just gave up. Your mother carried everything for months, and I let her because it was easier than facing my own failure." This was news to me. My parents had always seemed solid, unshakable. I had never known they had gone through anything like this. "What happened?" I asked. "One morning I woke up and she was gone. Just a note saying she needed time to think. She was gone all day and I had to take care of you and your brother." The house fell apart in about 3 hours. I burned lunch, forgot to pack your brother's baseball uniform, could not figure out the washing machine. By the time she came home, I was a mess, and I finally understood what I had been putting her through. "Did she threaten to leave you?" "No, she did not have to. When she came home, she just looked at me and said, 'This is what I do every day. Now you know.' It was the most powerful thing she could have done. She did not yell or cry or make threats. She just showed me the truth and I could not unsee it." "What did you do?" "I got my act together. It took me about a week to find work, not great work, but something, because I realized I was about to lose everything that mattered. Your mother gave me a choice without saying it out loud. Be a man and a partner or lose my family. Sometimes love needs a shock to wake it up, Katie. Sometimes you have to stop protecting people from the consequences of their actions." I was crying now, tears running down my face in the cold afternoon air. "I do not know if he will change, Dad. I do not know if he can. Then you need to decide what you are willing to live with. But I can tell you this. You are not helping him by doing everything. You are just making it possible for him to avoid growing up. And you are killing yourself in the process." We talked for a few more minutes, and then I hung up feeling both better and worse. Better because someone finally understood. Worse because I knew what I had to do and I was terrified. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the art museum, wandering through galleries I had not seen in years. The last time I had been here was on a date with Brian, back when we were first married and still discovering the city together. Back when he still planned surprises and held my hand and looked at me like I was someone special. When had that stopped? I could not pinpoint an exact moment. It had been gradual, a slow fade rather than a sudden ending. The demands of work, the arrival of kids, the mounting stress of bills and responsibilities. We had stopped being lovers and become roommates, then adversaries. Now we were strangers sharing a house, going through the motions of a marriage that existed only on paper. As the museum was closing, I realized I was hungry. I found a small Vietnamese restaurant and ordered pho, sitting at the counter and watching the cook work. The soup was hot and flavorful, full of herbs and spices that awakened my senses. I ate slowly, savoring every bite in no hurry to finish. It was after 7 when I finally headed home. The bus was crowded with people coming back from their Saturday activities, carrying shopping bags and chatting with friends. I sat in the back and watched the city slide by, my books in my lap, my mind clearer than it had been in months. I knew what was waiting for me at home. Chaos, probably. Anger, definitely. But also maybe a tiny crack in Brian's armor. A glimpse of understanding. I was not going home to fix things. I was going home to set boundaries. There was a difference. The house was dark when I pulled up, except for the flickering blue light of the television in the living room. I steeled myself and went inside. The smell hit me immediately. Something burnt, something sour, something that made my nose wrinkle. The kitchen was a disaster area. Pots and pans everywhere, food spilled on the counter, the floor sticky with something I could not identify. Chloe came running from the living room and threw herself at me, sobbing. "Mommy, where were you? We did not know what to do. Daddy tried to make lunch, but it was awful, and then we had cereal for dinner, but we ran out of milk." I held her tight, stroking her hair. Over her head, I could see Ethan standing in the doorway, his face, a mixture of relief and something else. Understanding, maybe. He had spent the day seeing what I dealt with every single day. Brian appeared behind him, looking haggard and defeated. There were stains on his shirt. His hair was disheveled. He looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. "Where were you?" His voice was hoarse. "Out, I told you in my note." "That is not an explanation. You cannot just disappear like that. We needed you." I gently disentangled myself from Chloe and looked at him steadily. "I do this every day, Brian. Every single day. Now you know what it is like." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around at the wreckage of the kitchen, the exhausted faces of my children, the defeated slump of my husband's shoulders. This was the truth of our life laid bare. This was what I had been hiding, covering up, managing on my own. I did not clean up. I did not fix anything. I heated up some leftover soup from the back of the fridge and served it in mismatched bowls. We ate in near silence, and then I sent the kids to bed without their usual routines. They needed sleep more than they needed baths and stories. Brian tried to talk to me several times that evening, but I brushed him off. I was too tired, too raw, too unsure of what to say. Instead, I took a long bath, the first one I had taken in months, and let the hot water soothe my aching muscles. When I finally went to bed, Brian was already asleep, or pretending to be. I did not care which. Sunday morning dawned gray and cold. I woke early out of habit, but instead of jumping into action, I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling. I could hear movement downstairs, the sound of cabinets opening and closing, the clink of dishes. Brian was attempting breakfast. I stayed where I was. When I finally went downstairs, I found him at the stove, scrambling eggs that looked more or less edible. The kids were at the table with orange juice and toast. It was not pancakes, but it was something. Brian looked up when I entered. "I made breakfast." "I see that." We ate in uncomfortable silence. The eggs were underseasoned and slightly rubbery, but they were cooked. After breakfast, Ethan and Chloe disappeared to their rooms without being asked, sensing the tension. Brian started cleaning up the kitchen, moving slowly and methodically. I watched him from the doorway. When he finished, he turned to face me. "We need to talk." "Yes, we do." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had written the bills Thursday night, where I had helped Chloe with her homework 100 times, where we had eaten thousands of meals as a family. Now it felt like neutral ground, a demilitarized zone between two warring parties. I spoke first because I had been preparing these words in my head all night. "I cannot do this anymore." Brian's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. I cannot keep living like this. I cannot keep being the only adult in this house. I cannot keep working full-time and doing everything else while you sit on the couch waiting for some perfect job to fall into your lap. I am trying to find work." "No, you are not. You are going through the motions. You are scrolling websites and updating your resume, but you are not actually applying. You are not actually doing anything." He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish. Yesterday, for the first time in 15 years, I did something for myself. I left without asking permission, without making sure everyone would be okay, without putting everyone else first, and the house fell apart in a matter of hours. Do you understand what that means?" He did not answer. "It means that I have been holding everything together alone. It means that without me, nothing functions. And that is not healthy. That is not a partnership. That is not a marriage." Brian's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "I am saying that things have to change, radically change. I am not asking anymore, I am telling you. You have 1 month to get a job. Any job. It does not have to be your dream job or the perfect fit. It just has to be something that brings in money and shows that you are willing to contribute. 1 month, that is not enough time. You have had 2 years, Brian. 2 years of not the right fit and just waiting for the right opportunity. Meanwhile, we are drowning in debt. Our kids are suffering. I am having a breakdown. 1 month is generous. And if I do not..." I met his eyes and I let him see everything. The exhaustion, the anger, the disappointment, but also the steel resolve that had formed somewhere during my day of freedom. "Then I will make a decision about our marriage. I will not stay in a situation where I am the only one trying. I deserve better than that. The kids deserve better than that." His face crumbled. You would leave me. I am saying I will not continue like this. Whether that means you change or I leave, that is up to you. The weight of the ultimatum hung between us. Brian looked like he was going to be sick. Catherine, I know I have been difficult. I know I have not pulled my weight. But you cannot just give up on us. I am not giving up. I am setting a boundary. There is a difference. And honestly, Brian, I am not the one who gave up. You did that 2 years ago when you decided it was easier to let me carry everything than to swallow your pride and take a job you thought was beneath you. He started to cry, then not dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that slid down his face. I am scared. What if I fail again? What if I cannot do it? For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of compassion for him. But it was not enough to make me back down. Then you fail, but at least you would be trying. At least you would be showing your children that it is better to try and fail than to not try at all. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Brian spoke. If I do this, if I get a job and start pulling my weight, will you stick? I thought about that question carefully. I do not know. I am not making any promises. Right now, I do not even know if I like you anymore, let alone love you. But I am willing to see if things can change. That is all I can offer. It was brutally honest, and I saw him flinch. But he needed to hear it. He needed to understand that this was not just about getting a job. It was about rebuilding everything we had let fall apart. I will try, he said finally. I will really try this time. Good. Because this is your last chance. Not just with me, but with Ethan and Chloe too. They are watching everything, Brian. They are learning from us. Right now they are learning that it is okay to give up, to let other people do all the work, to have no sense of responsibility. Is that really what you want to teach them? He shook his head, tears still streaming down his face. No. God, no. Then show them something different. Show them what it means to fight for your family. The conversation ended there. We did not hug or make up or suddenly fix everything. We just went our separate ways, each processing what had been said. I went to my room and finally turned on my phone. There were 7 missed calls from Brian and a dozen text messages ranging from confused to angry to panicked. I deleted them all without reading most of them. Monday morning came and everything was different. Brian was up early, earlier than me even. When I came downstairs, he was dressed in actual clothes, not gym shorts and a ratty t-shirt. He had made coffee and was sitting at the laptop, actually typing, actually doing something. I have 3 applications ready to submit, he said without looking up. I am going to send them out this morning, and I have a call with Victor at 10. He mentioned a position at his company. I did not praise him or encourage him. I just nodded and poured myself coffee. This was what he should have been doing all along. This was the bare minimum, not something deserving of applause. At work that day, Elaine called me into her office. Catherine, I wanted to follow up on our conversation from last week. The senior accountant position. Are you interested? I thought about the extra money, about what it would mean for the kids, for the bills, for my sense of self-worth. Yes, I am very interested. Good. The position comes with a 20% salary increase and more flexible hours once you are fully trained. I think you would be perfect for it. 20%. That was significant. That was the difference between barely surviving and actually living. When would I start? We can have you training next week if you are ready. The previous senior accountant is moving to our Boston office, so we need someone as soon as possible. I accepted on the spot. When I got home that evening, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Brian was in the kitchen, and for once something was cooking that did not smell burnt. I made dinner, he said. Just spaghetti, but I actually followed a recipe this time. Ethan and Chloe were setting the table without being asked. The kitchen was relatively clean. It was a small thing, microscopic even, but it was something. During dinner, Brian told us about his conversation with Victor. There is an account manager position at Keystone Building Supplies. It is not glamorous, but it is steady work and decent pay. I have an interview Wednesday. Ethan looked up from his plate. Are you actually going to take it if they offer it to you? The question was pointed, skeptical. Brian met his son's eyes. Yes. I am done waiting for something perfect. I just need to work. Chloe, always the more forgiving of the two, smiled. That is good, Daddy. Mommy has been really tired. The simple observation from my 8-year-old daughter almost broke me. Children see everything, notice everything, even when we think we are hiding it from them. After dinner, I told them about my promotion. Chloe cheered. Ethan gave me a rare smile. Brian congratulated me, but there was something in his expression that I could not quite read. Pride maybe, but also something that looked like shame. That night, as we were getting ready for bed, Brian spoke quietly. I am proud of you. For the promotion. You deserve it. Thank you. I am also sorry. For putting you in a position where you had to fight so hard just to keep us afloat. That should not have been all on you. I did not respond right away. An apology was good, but it was just words. I needed to see sustained action, real change, before I could trust it. We will see what happens. The next few weeks were strange. Brian was actually trying, actually applying to jobs, actually getting up before noon. He went to the interview at Keystone and came home cautiously optimistic. 3 days later, they called with an offer. The salary was not spectacular, but it was something. It was a paycheck, a schedule, a reason to get out of bed. His first day was on a Monday, 3.5 weeks after my ultimatum. He set an alarm, got dressed in clothes I had forgotten he owned, and took the bus downtown. When he came home that evening, he looked exhausted, but more alive than I had seen him in months. How was it? I asked. Hard. I am out of practice. But I think I can do this. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Brian worked. I worked. The kids went to school. Money was still tight, but with 2 incomes it was manageable. The crushing pressure that had been sitting on my chest started to ease just a little. But something had fundamentally shifted in me. I could not go back to being the woman I was before. I had tasted freedom, had remembered what it felt like to put myself first, to have needs and wants that mattered. I had drawn a line in the sand and I could not erase it. Brian noticed the change. You are different, he said one evening. I am. Are we going to be okay? I thought about that question carefully. I do not know. You are doing what I asked. You are working, contributing, showing up. But I am not the same person I was a month ago. I do not know if we can go back to how things were. I do not want to go back to how things were. That was broken. Then maybe we need to figure out something new. It was not a romantic conversation. It was not a declaration of renewed love. It was just honest. 2 people trying to navigate the wreckage of what they had built and figure out if there was anything worth salvaging. One Saturday afternoon, about 6 weeks after my disappearing act, I was at the farmer's market picking out vegetables when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to find David, the man from the gym that Sophia had mentioned. Catherine Wright, we have not formally met. I am David Chen. He was handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes and an easy smile. Hi, yes, Catherine. I have seen you at the gym a few times. You are usually on the elliptical by the windows. I felt myself blushing. That is me, trying to stay in shape. You do not need to try. You look great. The compliment caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had said something like that to me? Thank you. We talked for a few minutes, casual conversation about the market, the weather, nothing deep. But there was something in the way he looked at me, really looked at me, that made me feel seen in a way I had not felt in years. I know you are married, he said before we parted ways. I am not trying to overstep, but if you ever want to grab coffee as friends, I would enjoy getting to know you better. He handed me a business card and walked away before I could respond. I stood there holding the card, feeling a mixture of flattery and guilt and confusion. I was married. Brian was trying. This was not the time to be thinking about other men. But I kept the card. I slipped it into my wallet and I did not throw it away. That evening I found myself thinking about David's offer, coffee as friends. There was nothing wrong with that, was there? But I knew it was not that simple. Nothing was that simple. I told Sophia about the encounter when we met for our weekly coffee. She smiled knowingly. So, are you going to call him? No, I am married. You are married to a man who spent 2 years treating you like a maid. You are allowed to have friends, Kate. You are allowed to have a life outside of being someone's wife and mother. It feels wrong. What feels wrong? Having coffee with someone who makes you feel like a person, feeling attractive, feeling seen? I did not have a good answer for that. Sophia leaned forward. I am not saying you should have an affair. I am saying you should remember that you are a human being with worth and value, not just a support system for everyone else. Her words echoed in my head for days. I found myself looking at that business card more than once, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. I did not call. But I did not throw it away either. At home, things continued to improve incrementally. Brian was settling into his job, even starting to take some pride in it. He still had moments where he slipped back into old patterns, but I called him out immediately and he course-corrected. The kids were less stressed, less angry. Money was still tight, but we were not drowning anymore. But the distance between Brian and me remained. We were co-parenting, cohabiting, but we were not really partners. We shared a bed, but rarely touched. We talked about logistics and schedules, but never about feelings or dreams or the future. We were going through the motions, and I did not know if that was healing or just avoiding the inevitable. One night, about 2 months after everything changed, Brian asked me a question that had been hanging in the air. "Do you love me anymore?" I was folding laundry and I stopped mid-fold. It was the question I had been avoiding because I did not know the answer. "I do not know. I love who you used to be. I love the father you are trying to become. But do I love who you are right now? I honestly do not know." He nodded slowly, accepting the painful truth. "What can I do?" "Keep showing up, keep trying. Be someone I can respect again. Maybe the love will come back, maybe it will not. But respect is the foundation, and that has been missing for a long time." It was the most honest conversation we had had in years, maybe ever. No deflecting, no excuses, just raw truth. A few days later, Chloe had a soccer game. Both Brian and I went sitting together on the sidelines, but not really together. She scored a goal, and we both cheered. After the game, she ran to us, her face flushed with happiness. Did you see my goal?" "We saw, baby. You were amazing," I said, hugging her sweaty little body. Brian lifted her onto his shoulders and we walked to the car as a family. From the outside, we probably looked normal, functional even, but I felt the cracks, the fault lines that ran beneath the surface. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and my laptop. I had been researching something for weeks, but had been too afraid to actually do anything about it. Marriage counseling. The page was open in front of me, a list of therapists in the area who specialized in couples struggling to reconnect. Brian came in and saw what I was looking at. "Is that what I think it is?" "Yes. I think we need help. Professional help. I do not know how to fix this on my own." He sat down across from me. "Okay, if you think it will help, I am willing to try." I sent an inquiry to 3 different therapists that night. 2 responded within a day. We scheduled our first session for the following week. The therapist, Dr. Rachel Hammond, was in her 50s with warm eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to both of us talk for the first session, asked probing questions, and at the end gave us her assessment. "You are both exhausted. Catherine, you have been carrying the emotional weight of this family alone for too long. Brian, you have been avoiding responsibility out of fear and pride. The good news is that you are both here, both willing to work. The bad news is that there is a lot of damage to repair." Over the next several sessions, we unpacked years of resentment, disappointment, and miscommunication. Brian talked about the shame he felt after losing his job, how it spiraled into depression and paralysis. I talked about feeling invisible, taken for granted, like I was drowning and no one cared. "Did you ever ask for help?" Dr. Hammond asked me during one session. "All the time. But it was always met with excuses or defensiveness." She turned to Brian. "Did you hear her asking for help?" He was quiet for a long time. I think I tuned it out. It was easier to pretend everything was fine than to face how badly I was failing. It was painful, this excavation of our marriage. But it was also necessary. We could not rebuild on a rotten foundation. We had to tear everything down and see what was worth keeping. One evening, about 3 months into therapy, Brian did something unexpected. He came home with flowers, cheap grocery store carnations, but flowers nonetheless. "I know it is not much, but I wanted to do something nice for you." It was such a small gesture, but it made me cry. When was the last time he had thought about doing something nice for me? When was the last time I had been surprised by kindness from my own husband? "Thank you," I managed. We had dinner as a family, and for the first time in months, maybe years, it felt like we were all actually present. Not just going through the motions, but actually engaged with each other. Ethan told a story about school that made us all laugh. Chloe showed us a drawing she had made. Brian asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. I asked about his day and could tell he appreciated being asked. It was not perfect. We were not fixed. But it was progress. That night, after the kids were asleep, Brian and I sat on the couch together. Not touching, but closer than we had been in months. "I have been thinking about what you said. about respect being the foundation. And I want to earn that back. I want you to be able to respect me again, but I also want to respect myself again. I lost that somewhere along the way. When did you lose it? He thought about that. When I lost my job. I based so much of my identity on what I did for a living, and when that was gone, I did not know who I was anymore. So I became nothing. I let myself become nothing. It was the most self-aware thing I had heard him say in years. You are not nothing. You never were. But you did let fear make you small. I know. And I am sorry. Not just for the practical stuff, the money and the housework. I am sorry for making you feel invisible. For not seeing how hard you were working, how much you were sacrificing. For taking you for granted. It was the apology I had been waiting 2 years to hear, but hearing it did not magically fix everything. It was a start, but only a start. I appreciate that, but words are not enough. You know that, right? I know, which is why I'm going to keep showing up every day. I am going to keep trying until you believe it. We sat in silence for a while, and then tentatively Brian reached for my hand. I let him take it. His palm was warm, familiar despite everything. We sat like that until I started to fall asleep on the couch. As the months passed, life found a new rhythm. Not the old normal, but a different normal. Brian continued working, even got a small raise after his 90-day review. I excelled in my new position and started to feel like I was using my brain again, not just surviving. The kids adjusted, their stress levels decreasing as the household tension eased. Sophia and I continued our weekly coffee dates, and she watched my transformation with approval. You look different, she said one day. Lighter. I feel different. I am not sure if we are going to make it, Brian and me. But I am okay with that uncertainty. I am not willing to sacrifice myself anymore, whatever happens. She raised her coffee cup in a toast. To Kate, who finally remembered she matters. I still had David's business card in my wallet. I had never called, never even been tempted to. Not because I was afraid or felt guilty, but because I realized I did not need validation from another man. I needed validation from myself. I needed to know that I was enough, that I had worth, that I deserved better. And I had learned that not from David's attention, but from my own actions, my own strength. One Saturday morning, almost 6 months after my disappearing act, I woke up and realized the note was still on the refrigerator. I have something I need to do. I will be back tonight. It had become a permanent fixture held up by a magnet shaped like a sunflower that Chloe had made in art class. Brian saw me looking at it. Why do you keep that up? As a reminder. Of what? Of the day I chose myself. Of the day I remembered that I matter too. He nodded slowly. I am glad you did. I needed the wake-up call. We all did. It was true. Ethan was doing better in school, no more fights, more focused. Chloe was thriving in soccer, her confidence growing. Brian was becoming someone the kids could look up to again. And I was learning to set boundaries, to say no, to put on my own oxygen mask first. Were we happy? Not yet. Were we healing? Maybe. Were we trying? Yes. And for now, that was enough. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching Brian help Chloe with her homework. He was patient, encouraging, present. Ethan was at the stove making himself a snack, humming along to music from his headphones. The house was warm and clean and full of life. I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago, exhausted, resentful, invisible. I thought about the moment on the bus when I had heard that man thank his wife, apologize, treat her like she mattered. I thought about the crack that had opened in me, the tiny spark of rebellion that had grown into a flame. I would never go back to being that woman. Life was too short to wait for other people to grow up, too precious to waste on promises that never materialized. Whatever came next, whether Brian and I made it or did not, whether we rebuilt something beautiful or admitted defeat, I would walk into it with my eyes open, my voice steady, and my self-worth no longer up for negotiation. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough.